Hey, welcome back to Biz Talk TV. I'm your business host and guide, Michael Rager. As you can see by the sign behind me, it's time for Purple Politics. Alina, how are you today?
I am fantastic, Michael. It's good to see you.
Well, it's good to see you. It's been a whole week. We've had some really good discussions before we got here. So which way are we going to go today? We got a couple rabbit holes we can go down, and because there's a lot going on politically. Which way we want to go today? Do we want to start with the obvious stuff, or we want to go a little less obvious today?
Well, I think both of them are obvious, but there's one that is definitely it's a volcano that's begun to erupt, and that would be First Amendment rights in the Trump indictments, which
Mm-hmm.
he's appearing today in court at 4. Um, but I think that there's a more important issue underlying a lot of what we have been discussing in the past, and that is our aging congressional members and what we as the people need to do, because we currently have congressional members that have a lifetime appointment under the illusion of being elected. And so I was thinking that I was very hot about that, especially after seeing Senate Minority Leader Michael McCarthy having that 30-second episode. And that is a concern. I mean, that's a health concern. But also, what does that say for the way our government is being led?
Well, yeah, it's there, and I think we've seen it. It's some of these people in Congress and the Senate, they're there 25, 30, 35 years. And then what happens is their kids get elected. And we're seeing generational lines. I knew growing up in Michigan, there was a couple families that were just there forever. And that's who we saw. That's where they were. You just voted for them because their name was on the ballot. And people are doing that. How do we change it? I mean, it seems like everybody talks term limits, but when it comes to really implementing it, it never moves. Why not?
Well, I think that, well, first of all, congressional members would have to vote to enact term limits, and that's not going to happen. And the other argument too is because I know in Florida we have term limits for our legislatures, and the reality is once you have a newly elected senator or representative, by the time they get their leadership under their belt, they kind of get the ways of how things are done at our Tallahassee Capitol, they're about to term out. So there is definitely pros and cons. My thinking, though, is perhaps we need to enact a mandatory retirement age. And I'm not saying 62, 64, or anything, but maybe 75, maybe 80. I mean, we're talking Joe Biden was in a senator for 45 years.
Hmm.
That is over half his life. And we're not talking his presidential term. I mean, we have people that have what is seems to be a lifetime appointment. And that is the issue because our forefathers, when they were designing this great country, they wanted to ensure that there was not a ruler. So that's why we have term limits on our president. However, there is a huge power held by congressional members. And when you have someone like, I think Pelosi was elected in the 80s, and you have people that have been there that potentially are lifetimers. So why is it that we have this autocrat, section of our government that do as they please, stay on until death, that doesn't hold true for the vast majority of us when we're working or even our president is turned out. It
Yeah, well,
doesn't make sense to me.
yeah, I like the idea of mandatory retirement age. I think that that's something very important. But when it's we, the people, now are saying, hey, we don't want you there forever, but the only one that can vote it out is you guys who are there forever, we the people lose, don't we?
It's time to change it up.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes into how is it that you have someone like the senator from California that's 90 that looks like she's incapacitated, had to be told, and I apologize, her name popped out of my head, but she had to be told how to vote. But yet she was reelected. And so the question is how is it that she is being reelected? Is it because the full force of the Democratic National Committee, or the full force, if you're a Republican, of the Republican National Committee are behind you, plus all of these super PACs, all of this money? And for those of us that are voters, we tend to vote party line. It's kind of like this wicked cycle that we want change, but we can't get the change because the people who hold the purse strings basically are telling us these are who we're voting for. That's actually happening even now with the Democratic presidential primary. We have three, at least I know of three candidates that are running for the Democratic nomination for president. Our current president, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Marianne Williamson. Now, RFK, he's making some real waves, and he is appealing to a vast majority of people on the Republican side, on the Democratic side, and the independent side. However, the Democratic National Committee had determined, no, Joe is our candidate. We're not having debates. We're not having this. How is this promoting a proper election or allowing the people to have choices in who they get to vote for?
Well, yeah, that's it, and I think for sure, and I kind of get here. We start looking at the electoral college as well. You know, us being in Texas, if even if I wanted to vote Democrat, it doesn't matter because there's no way it's going to win. You know, especially when looking at national elections. How do we start looking at this and changing it? Because one of the things that I see, and I don't want to tick people off, but I probably will, but I think a lot of people when they go to the polls, they're lazy. It's way easier to vote straight ticket than it actually is to take some time and understand who's actually being elected and what skill set do they have and what's their background and why should we put them in office. I just think as a society we become lazy.
Well, absolutely. If you look at it, it's name recognition.
Yep.
So let's go back. Yeah. If Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was not a Kennedy, and let's just say he was Robert F. Johnson, would people have as much of an attraction to hear what he says? Or is it because he is part of the Kennedy lineage, the Camelot family? Um, and you could say with the Bush family at one point. I mean, you had two family members, a father and son, that were both president. You have, I think, well, obviously, Jeb Bush, who was governor. I believe it is Jeb's son that was running for governor at one point for Texas, and he may be an elected official
He
prior to
was
that.
railroad
So we
commissioner for a while.
definitely
Yeah.
have like political dynasty families,
Mm-hmm.
even couples, the Clintons.
Yep.
But you got to look at it as like, okay, so if we don't want these dynasties, if we don't want this lifetime potential of a career, how do we get more power within the people and how do we educate the people? And then it also could go to, I mean, let's look at advertisings. People who spend a lot of money on advertising and such get their name recognized.
Yeah.
But again, that's the campaign reforms.
Well, I think that's a lot of it too. The advertising budgets that some of these guys have is ridiculous. And if there's got to be a way to even that playing field. Here's all the money you get. Go spend it smartly. You can't spend more. You can't do anything else. Just because people are donating to you, we're seeing it there because that's how we know that agendas are getting pushed. I'm going to give you $30 million to win. Now, when I need stuff voted for, you better vote for me. And
Oh,
we know that happened. I mean, it's so obvious. All right, we got about a minute and a half. This always goes fast. This always goes fast. You talked about censorship and stuff like that going on with Kennedy. That was a very interesting play last week, and how does it hurt Kennedy's potential besides the fact that the DNC has already said, hey, we're not even going there. We're not going to allow him to even go up and debate against Biden.
actually, it is helping him It really is. And I have to tell you, I've been following him. He's doing a very
Hmm.
grassroots, minimal type of funding type of things in that he's using social media. He's being, on Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, which you would never think Fox News would have him on, but he has. But you know what I love about it is he's speaking the truth. I mean, he's testifying before a congressional hearing on censorship, and his own party were trying to censor him. 102 Democrats signed a letter for him to be censored. First Amendment right to free speech is not supposed to be about what is flowery and lovely and agreeable. It's there to protect those things that are not favorable or could be offensive. I mean, I personally would never burn our American flag. However, I will protect the rights of people because on their constitutional rights, they
Hmm.
can burn our flag,
Right.
for instance. But for RFK, I think you know, every time the DNC or the Democratic Party or someone launches something against him or tries to hold him down, he's been able to spin it by being very forthright and speaking about it, and it's giving him bigger platforms.
Well, let's hope it continues. At least we got to get to the point that we've got two people that it looks like we're going to have to vote for next year. And I think it's the two people that most of us don't want to vote for. We want better choices, and we got to come up with ways to get better choices.
Well, and again, we're looking at two 80-some-year-olds
Yeah.
potential if the polls are correct. Now,
Yeah.
again, polls have been wrong before. In 2016, they were definitely way off.
Yeah.
And maybe there is still hope. I feel like there are enough new candidates too that are
Yep.
doing ripples, like Vivek on the
Mm-hmm.
Republican side.
Mm-hmm.
He he's interesting and he's
He
fun
is
and
interesting. Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
very outspoken. So maybe there will be enough ripples, and if those of us that really want to bring back common sense to our nation
Mm-hmm.
and have representative government of the people, not the corporation, now is the time to start standing up.
Well, awesome, awesome, Alina. This is always awesome. I love Purple Politics. You guys should hear us before we get on camera. It's even better then. So it's good to see you. We'll talk to you more next week. I'm Michael Rager here on Biz Talk TV. We'll be back with more on the Now Media Television Networks right after this.